Hi, I'm Chad Boeninger, Business Librarian for Ohio University Libraries. I make videos like this for my students at Ohio University to teach them how to use business research tools. This can also help anybody on the internet as well who might also have access to these tools as well. This video that follows is actually a recording of a research session that I did with some business students earlier this week that demonstrates how to effectively use Mergent Intellect to understand competitors in a local market. Basically, we're going to use Mergent Intellect to look at companies by industry in a local area, get a nice list, and understand like what competitors are in the local market. So let's get started. And what you can do in Mergent Intellect is it basically is a kind of an index of companies, kind of like the old phone book used to be, if you ever used a phone book back in the day. This is basically kind of collects company information and puts it in a way that kind of is pretty easily found and organized, and you can kind of do searches based on custom criteria and things like that. Okay, so if you know a particular company that you're looking for, you can use the name search box here. All right, so if you know I'm looking for a particular store that is in Columbus that sells candy, you can type the company in there and get some basic information about the company. What I'm going to do is use the advanced search down here. Okay, so what we're going to do is use advanced search, and there's lots of criteria that you can look for. And for my example, I'm going to assume that we are just looking at U.S. companies. If you want to, you can look at international companies if you're doing something on an international scale. But I'm going to look for, start by looking at industry here, right? So I'm going to do industry, and then use these industry codes to search for an industry that matches like what I'm researching. Okay. Now there are a couple different options here. There's a SIC code and NAICS code. You can try both. Basically, it's a different kind of code that is used to identify companies in the industry. Okay. I think in this particular database, the SIC code actually works a little bit better than the NAICS code, but you can try both. Okay, so we do SIC code here, and if we search for candy, you can see it will bring up candy and other confectionery products. So that's like the manufacturing side. And then if we see here is candy, nut, and confectionery stores, and then let's look at that. Let's do candy, nut, confectionery stores. That looks pretty good to me. And actually, I'm going to choose this one here: candy, nut, confectionery stores. This one is the kind of the broadest industry category. As we start adding more digits, we get like a little bit more granular, so to speak. So I'm just going to start broad with the kind of the broadest industry perspective I can. So I'm just using the 5441. And then nothing happens yet until I add this to my criteria. And when I do, it's going to tell me that there are 36,803 companies in the US that are classified with that industry code in this particular database. All right. So that's a big old list. I don't want just that whole list. So what I'm going to do is limit by location here. And I'm going to do a metro area as an example. And you can do zip code, you can do a radius. If you had an address, you could do a radius of within like 5 miles of a particular location, etc. For my example, I'm just going to do the metro area, and I'm going to choose Columbus, Ohio. All right, so these are kind of laid out kind of awkwardly here. They're actually alphabetically. If you go to the right and keep going, it's kind of a weird way to look at it, but that's how it's done. And then we'll add to our criteria here. And so now, instead of the 38,000 companies, now we have 316 companies that are in the Columbus, Ohio MSA. Okay, now that's the metro area. So that's basically probably, if you think of it from the perspective, like where does the television broadcast station like reach? That's typically what you would refer to as kind of a metro area, if you will. Okay, which may actually include Athens and Logan and Lancaster and places like that because of the large metro area kind of thing. Okay, so if we do a search here, this is going to retrieve the 316 companies. They're going to be sorted by sales. Now, a lot of these are going to be privately held companies, so they're going to be estimated sales, okay? But you can kind of look at that list there. If you like a company, for example, if you want to know more about it, you can click on the individual company and find information about that company, things like that, okay? Now, we've got 316 companies, so if we wanted to do that for each individual company, that's going to get a little bit tedious. So what you can do, provided you've got less than like a list of like, I think 2,500 companies, you can do this process. So what we're going to do is basically build a list and basically export this list in Excel to give us something that's a little bit easier to kind of digest, all right? So I'm going to click on all here, and this is going to select all of my companies in the list, even though it doesn't put a checkbox here. It's got all my companies here. And over here in the right-hand corner, there's this like tabbed folder looking thing, which says build files. So I'm going to click there, and that is going to take us to this screen, which it's got everything that's available, possibly checked, which is going to give us probably too much information. So I'm actually just going to click choose fields and kind of create my own list rather than getting a bunch of stuff, okay? I happen to know that a lot of this information may not be available for these small privately held companies, so I'm not going to choose everything that's available to me, right? So obviously I want like company name, right? From the perspective of like doing a new business and maybe a new business entry into a market, I definitely want to know like how long companies in the area have been in the business. So year of founding is pretty good, right? Here we see, let's get maybe their website if they have that. Might want to know if they're minority owned. That might be kind of cool to look at, right? We can see different kind of locations. We can see their city. Maybe we have their, their physical address, things like that. And then maybe want to see like a sales and maybe how many employees they have, things like that, okay? Now, if you scroll down, you see all this like financial info. Generally speaking, for these small privately held companies, none of this data is going to be available here. This will be available for like, if you were looking at large publicly held companies, this kind of stuff isn't available for the public or even in these kind of resources like this, because private companies don't have to disclose that information, right? You can also go down here. There's an executive option, right? This is an area whereby, let's say if you had a product that you were trying to sell to like candy companies, right? Or candy stores, right? So if you had a new, I don't know, automatic AI mechanism that actually sorted the M&Ms automatically for you by color or something like that. You dump in a box of M&Ms or Skittles and it, puts all the greens over here and all the yellows over here, etc. And you were like, I want to sell this to candy stores. This would help give you a list of potential people to call on, right? Or if you are also interested in maybe working in a candy store, this might give you an option for people to send your resume to. So you can kind of use it for both things, right? So I'm going to just call this candy, and we will build our files here. And you can either email it to yourself or download it, and we'll see how long this takes on our end. We will download our file, and what this looks like is we will save that. And open my Excel here. We will say yes. It's a CSV. It's just Microsoft likes to get a little finicky on what kind of products or things it opens. So here we have our big list of all the things we asked for. Here's our sales here, employees, etc., physical address, if they have a website, year of founding, things like that. And then over here at the bottom, we've got a tab for the executives that we might call on. For example, if we were selling a product or if we're looking for a job or whatever, it's a great way to kind of pull together that information. So great way to kind of get that kind of info. All right. Hopefully this video helped you better understand how to use this resource effectively, and I wish you the best of luck in your research. Take care.